Hello, welcome to Insight. Today on Insight, an emerging Ethiopian American star, Meron Teklu. Meron is a first-generation American, Ethiopian American. Her parents are from Ethiopia. Meron is running for office in Alexandria, Virginia. She wants to be the first Ethiopian American city council member in Virginia. Welcome, Meron.
Thank you for having me tonight, and hello, salam to my large diaspora family. It is so wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you, and welcome again. Let's begin by you giving us a brief introduction about yourself.
Yes, and thank you, Gaza. A brief intro for those who may not know me, and this is our first time meeting each other. It's wonderful to meet you. My name is Meron Teklu, and I am running for Alexandria City Council in Virginia. I am the daughter of Ethiopian immigrants and a product of our local public schools. I was born in Alexandria, raised in Northern Virginia, and I currently live in Alexandria's West End, where over 45% of our community come from immigrant backgrounds. As I mentioned, my story, it really starts with my parents. They came from Ethiopia, settled in Alexandria as one of their first communities here in the United States, seeking better opportunities and in pursuit of the American dream. They instilled in me the importance of hard work, education, and giving back to our community. As a student, I was always involved in leadership or student government, whether it was serving as middle school treasurer, in our Student Human Rights Commission, as senior class officers, or even organizing for Black Lives Matter. I am also a proud graduate of the College of William & Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia. In our community, I've served in a variety of nonprofit roles, most notably as an advisory board member for the Wegene Ethiopian Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to rebuilding families one child at a time. I've also served as a community manager for IEA Councils on Higher Education, a nonprofit dedicated to helping students of East African heritage in the DC metro area navigate the college admissions process and help support those who come from first-generation college background or are new Americans or second-generation Americans here in the Northern Virginia, DC metro area. And professionally, as a daytime, I work as a technology management consultant for a large professional services firm here in Northern Virginia. I work with a variety of clients from the state and federal government to Fortune 500 companies, helping to design digital solutions that impact millions of customers every day. And so the reason that I'm running right now for Alexandria City Council is that during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen our communities of color, and more specifically, immigrant communities, be disproportionately affected by this pandemic. And I believe that it's critical for us to amplify and elevate those voices as we rebuild our local economy. And so I believe that I'll bring a fresh, data-driven, while people-centered perspective to the city of Alexandria. And I hope to earn your support if you live in Alexandria for the June 8th Democratic primary. If you don't live in Alexandria, I hope that you can help share my story and spread the word to your family, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles who live in the city of Alexandria and can help us get out the word and vote on June 8th.
A very impressive background, and you already explained why you are motivated to run for office. I think I would like to ask you, what is the platform you are running on? I know you are talking about delivering services to marginalized and underserviced communities. So why don't you give us what you mean by marginalized and underserved communities, and also what are the programs or how you're going to deliver better services to these communities?
Excellent question. When we say marginalized communities, many times, of course, that is our communities of color. That's our Black and brown residents, our small business owners, our community organizers, here in Alexandria. That also includes those from different backgrounds who will need support post this pandemic to ensure that they have the necessary financial assistance, the necessary assistance in finding local job opportunities, and for healthcare as well. And so when we think of amplifying the voice of our marginalized communities, that also includes our most vulnerable. Those who may be experiencing homelessness, may be experiencing food insecurity. These are all communities that we need to prioritize for a just COVID-19 recovery effort. So my plan, our platform, and how we've positioned ourselves, we'd like to ensure that Alexandria is a connected, inclusive, safe, and vibrant historic city that puts the needs of its community first. And so we have outlined 5 key pillars of this campaign. The first is a focus on our youth and our community. The youth are part of our future, and we know that it's going to be important for us to invest in education both in and out of the classroom. This pandemic, we have seen the shift from in-person learning to online learning, and that has been tough for many of our students. That has also been tough for our parents as well, who have been now juggling their full-time job while also supporting their young students who are going and learning through the computer now. And so as we think about supporting our students, we also need to have the conversation around mental health and wellness resources that we can provide in the city of Alexandria. I also want to ensure that we provide opportunities for our youth to get civically engaged in this process. We have a variety of boards and commissions in the city of Alexandria. I would love to see us diversify those opportunities to help also amplify youth representation within that, and ensure that we collectively work together to make sure that our young people are supported during and after this pandemic. The second part of that priority focuses on our community at large. And at the heart of a happy and healthy community is a safe home. We've seen in the city of Alexandria a rising crisis related to affordable housing. And in the conversation about equity and ensuring that our diverse communities are able to afford to live in the city of Alexandria, it's important that we prioritize investing in more affordable housing opportunities. We have seen since March of 2020, over 400 eviction cases be filed in the city of Alexandria just at one complex, the Southern Towers complex, that actually houses many different residents of immigrant backgrounds, including our Ethiopian and Eritrean community members as well. So when we think about a just COVID-19 recovery and we think about amplifying and prioritizing our community, we need to ensure that we address this incredible housing crisis that has now been going on for the last few decades in Alexandria. So some of my key priorities: amplifying our youth voice and ensuring that we have mental health and wellness support during and after this pandemic, but also ensuring that we address the affordable housing crisis here in Alexandria will be critical for our next city council to prioritize. The second priority that we have in this campaign is a focus on innovation and technology. So I come from a technology background. I work with a variety of clients to launch digital solutions. And a big issue right now in Alexandria is investing in our broadband infrastructure. We do not have high internet connectivity across the city. There are different parts of the city that you'll notice don't always have the best internet connection. We only have one internet service provider in the city of Alexandria, which serves over 150,000 residents and is growing by the day. So ensuring that we modernize our infrastructure and bring it into the 21st century will be important. We also have a lot of issues related to traffic and mitigating against long-term flooding that will need to leverage technology solutions to help drive change forward and ensure that we take a future-forward approach to how we optimize city efficiency. The third priority that I have is a focus on economy and business. I would love to help champion increased investment for our women and small businesses, and particularly minority and women-owned small businesses, is a focus of mine because, again, during this pandemic, we have seen that our small businesses have been hit. You know, folks who run restaurants, hair salons, barbershops, etc., have not seen the same foot traffic that comes through their doors pre-pandemic. And so when we think about an equitable recovery after this pandemic, we have to ensure that we support those who have been most hit in our small business community, either through increased investment in small business loans, but also supporting and ensuring that we help drive traffic, whether it's through tourism, whether it's through city public-private partnerships to support our small business ecosystem, and then also to increase local job opportunities. That will have to be one of our key priorities in the next 2022 council year. We also want to ensure that in the fight for an equitable workplace, we prioritize supporting our public employees. Most recently, our City Council has passed the first collective bargaining ordinance in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which has been quite exciting for us to help pioneer and champion in Alexandria. I will continue to fight to help ensure that we have a strong collective bargaining ordinance in the future, and that we prioritize livable wages, fair workplace conditions, and ensuring that our employees who may not live in the city of Alexandria are still prioritized and supported on the City Council. The fourth priority that we have is a focus on environment and sustainability. So we know climate change is real, and that we have to take actionable steps on a local level to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. I am a fond advocate of investing in energy efficiency programming and renewable energy and in new modes of transportation. And that means that we have to share the road, not just with our cars, but with our bikers, with our pedestrians, with those who are taking our public transportation, and ensuring that it's affordable, it's accessible, and that we continue to fund those type of initiatives. And last but not least, I will say our last priority, and there's a lot of them, but our last priority is a focus on COVID-19 relief. Again, this has been a time of crisis for many in our community, and we will have to mitigate against these long-term effects from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have some great goals in the city of Alexandria to have over 80% of our population vaccinated by the end of the summer, but we'll have to continue to support equitable distribution of the vaccine, of testing, and ensuring that the $59.6 million that has been allocated to the city of Alexandria as part of the American Rescue Plan is prioritized in a way that touches the various communities that have been impacted by this pandemic. So utilizing that funding for things like rental assistance programs, investing in our infrastructure, investing in affordable housing, will be critical for us to consider, and the next council will have the opportunity to also shape that as well.
Mm-hmm. That was an impressive list. I want to ask you, in the Washington metropolitan area, usually we talk about counties like Fairfax County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. Alexandria is a city. So I would like you to give a brief description of the structure of Alexandria government, and if you were elected to the city council, what mechanism, what authority does the city council have to benefit the regular or the disadvantaged people in Alexandria?
Yes, excellent point. So Alexandria is exactly that. We are not a county, but we are a city. And the representation that we have in Alexandria is we have an Alexandria mayor. The current mayor is Justin Wilson. We also have 6 city council members who are elected at large. And that at large system is essentially our voting mechanism for the top 6 candidates for Alexandria City Council. And again, we have over 150,000 residents in the city of Alexandria, and there is tremendous opportunity to implement policy on a local level that can help amplify and elevate our minority community. Some of the things that we can do as part of the city council and any policy that we put forth is investing in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Managing our city budget is a part of the duty and responsibility of the city council. The city council is supported by city staff. We have a city manager. We have other staff that support the city manager's office that help propose these policies in conjunction with the public, in conjunction with those who sit on the council. And there's different levels, of course, to government. Not every change in the city is actually in the I would say, scope of the city of Alexandria. For example, related to evictions, that has been mandated on a state level. The eviction moratorium is implemented at the Commonwealth of Virginia level rather than the city level. So that's an example of where we don't have as much power to institute change. But what we can do is ensure that we have increased funding in our budget to allocate additional affordable housing units, to invest in our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, to negotiate with new developers that come into the city of Alexandria and ensure that we have an increased amount of affordable or market rate units that can help support those of low to moderate income backgrounds.
So before I proceed to another question, I want to ask you the demographic of Alexandria. How many people live in Alexandria, and what is the breakdown of the Alexandria City Council?
Yes, so we are 150,000 residents plus, and in terms of the breakdown of the City Council itself, we have currently on the council, we have 3 incumbents who are running for re-election. Councilman John Taylor Chapman is running for a 4th term. He's been on the council now for almost 9 years, and he is one of our African-American leaders in the community. He runs his own African-American history small business. We also have Councilman Kaneka Gire. He is the first elected Latino council member to the Alexandria City Council. He was first elected in 2018. And we also have Councilman Mosifildin. He is the first elected Sudanese American to the Alexandria City Council. So there have been a few firsts in the last election cycle. Some other folks that we have on the council, we have Vice Mayor Bennett Parker. She's not seeking re-election this year. She's actually running for the House of Delegates. And we have Councilwoman Pepper. She has been on the council for 30 plus years. She's retiring this year, so she will not be seeking re-election. And then we also have Councilwoman Amy Jackson, who is seeking re-election this year as well. But, you know, we have 3 out of 6 seats for Alexandria City Council running uncontested. Again, City Council members are voted at large by the Alexandria community. We have over 90,000 registered voters in the city of Alexandria. So we really do need your voice to be heard in this race. Typical turnout for a primary, unfortunately, we do not always have our community turn out. Probably about 20% of registered voters in the city of Alexandria come out to vote at the local primaries. And so it is important to make sure that we have our voice heard and represented both at a federal level, but also at the city and state levels as well.
Do you have figures about the number of Eritreans and Ethiopians that have been registered?
You know, I do not have specific figures on that. Unfortunately, many of our Virginia voter databases do not have great demographical data, but in terms of what we know to be true, we have a large Ethiopian and Eritrean community here in Alexandria. one of 4 languages that are widely translated in Alexandria is Amharic. And we know that we probably have about 50 to 10,000 folks who come from Ethiopian or Eritrean backgrounds as a rough estimate. But that is, of course, not final. That is what we assume to be true based on what we know right now. But we do have a sizable representation and community here in Alexandria.
So what has been your outreach to these communities?
Yes, we've been doing a lot of different outreach, it's been hard campaigning during a pandemic, right? It's been a lot of different Zoom calls, a lot of different invitations to different forums to help share our vision for Alexandria and messaging. Most recently, we've done a lot of different pop-ups or meet and greets in the city of Alexandria where folks can kind of come and learn more about myself, about our campaign, our team. And it has been tremendous to see the positive amount of support thus far. I think everybody's very excited to see someone of Ethiopian heritage running for office here in Alexandria. It has been wonderful just talking with our various small business owners in Alexandria, learning more about the issues that they've experienced in this COVID-19 pandemic, but also the support that they're looking to gain from Alexandria itself. There's a lot of conversation of how can we help bring the vibrancy of our Ethiopian and Eritrean heritage to the city of Alexandria. How can we help bridge that gap also between newer Americans who may be exploring for the first time local job opportunities, wanting to help ensure that we have city support for newer immigrants in our community, while also supporting those who have been here for generations, right? It's been a lot of good learnings that I've had in just talking with different community members, through Zoom, through meet and greets. We've also been going door to door in Alexandria as well, talking to different folks in their neighborhoods, trying to understand exactly what are the issues that have been facing them currently and what could we look to help champion in 2022 and beyond.
The fact that there are different diversity on the city council. Can you talk about representation? You already mentioned that the first Ethiopian American being a member of the city council, but as you say, there is a significant number of Ethiopians and Ethiopian Americans in this area, and none of us are on any elected office. So can you talk about representation and how it will benefit Ethiopia, Ethiopians, and first-generation Ethiopians?
Of course. Representation matters. That is a fact. Unless we have elected officials with the lived experiences of our community or the shared culture or history of our community, then we will not be able to equitably advocate for our issues. And so when I think about representation and why it's important in Alexandria, right now we have an outgoing council member from our African diaspora community. I mentioned Councilman Mo Siefelden, who is not seeking re-election. And so there's going to be a sizable gap on the council itself where we won't have anyone who comes from that lens, right? And so I see that as one potential issue. The second potential issue I see in having a lack of representation in our elected offices is that when we go to help advocate for other international issues, unless we have a voice in those conversations, it's difficult to help push new policy, pursue new programming, to help bring that perspective of our vibrant international and diaspora community and help bridge the gap and create new connections, not just here in Alexandria, also with our international community. So some ideas that I would have to help bring the vibrancy of our culture to Alexandria is one, exploring a concept of sister city partnerships. That's something that Alexandria has done with many different European cities. I would love to see that partnership with our Ethiopian and Eritrean community as well. The second of which, again, I mentioned new immigrants and new Americans that come to the city of Alexandria, ensuring that they have the support they need to find housing, to find local job opportunities, etc. I do believe that the city can help bridge that gap as well. The third is standing up an office of immigrant affairs. That has been something pursued in other cities across the nation. And so when we think of Alexandria really changing over the last 20 years now from a suburban area to a more urban area, right outside of the DC metro area, it's going to be important that we have new offices in place to help advocate for our issues. And so I would love to see us stand up an Office of Immigrant Affairs to help ensure that we continue that representation. But none of that can start until we have elected officials who understand these issues and can help advocate for those as well.
So many Ethiopians in the Washington metropolitan area, I think it is true also in Alexandria, earn their livings through by working the transportation systems, taxis, Uber, the gig economy and buses and things like that. My understanding is the city council is instrumental in determining the work conditions and the financial gains of these employees. Is that accurate? If that's accurate, is that one area you will give focus to?
Yes, I would say that is certainly an area that I would love to give focus to. And a lot of these conversations have begun already in the city council, where, we have new agreements with some of these new ride-sharing programs such as Uber and Lyft, etc., that we've seen have significantly taken a chunk of the market from our taxi drivers. And so ensuring that we can help support this time of balancing different interests will be very important. And I would love to help champion that as well, because ultimately we know that many of our community come from working class backgrounds, and transportation is a common issue in the city of Alexandria that has been top of mind for many different candidates in this race. We have a lot of conversation in Alexandria about traffic, about workplace conditions, and ensuring that we have livable wages. And so in this campaign, I would love to help prioritize and champion our causes, while also ensuring that we think of the long-term strategy on how we support our community, given that there's these new technologies that have come out and this rising gig economy that you've mentioned. It's a new working model that will need to be considered as we introduce new policy in the city of Alexandria.
When we talk about an election, running for office, the most important thing is the vote. But in America, to get the vote, you need a lot of money, finance. I looked at, when I was doing research for this interview, I looked at the amount of money raised by the other candidates, your competitors. You seem to lack a lot of money. So how can the Ethiopian, the Eritrean, the African community can help in that area? Do you have a website? How do you fundraise? Can you talk about that?
Yes, I will certainly accept any and all donations. We are at the last leg of our campaign. We have less than 2 weeks to the June 8th Democratic primary. So we need all of the support that we can get. One is voting on June 8th and/or before, if you can do in-person absentee voting or vote by mail by this Friday. The second way to help is to get involved. If you're local to Alexandria, we would love to have your support, either going door to door. If you're not local to Alexandria, making calls to Alexandria voters. We do have various volunteer opportunities that you can sign up for on our website. And our website is meronforcouncil.com. And on that website, you'll learn a little bit more about myself, about our campaign priorities, and you should also have the opportunity to donate or get involved and volunteer with our campaign. We would love to have you as part of our team. But to answer your other question around campaign financing, yes, this is a big issue, right? In American politics, typically those who raise the most money are looked at as the most viable candidates in the race. And when you have folks of minority backgrounds who enter local politics, you are already at a disadvantage, right? Our communities do not always have the same what I would say level of funding as our other counterparts. So in launching this campaign, we launched on March 1st. Our first quarter, which ended on March 31st, we came quite a bit under in terms of our competition. Since then, we've been able to raise up to now a little over 20,000 US dollars. And we're continuing to push our fundraising goals. We have an upcoming campaign finance deadline on May 27th, but we'll be continuing to fundraise through the June 8th primary. But we feel confident. We think that we have enough to help gain the momentum that we need in Alexandria. We've already been distributing our campaign literature to help spread the word. And, one thing I will mention is that our first Sudanese American elected to the council, Councilman Sifulden, who actually raised the least amount of funding out of his race as well. I think he had raised maybe $9,000 and came in third in the primary. So, it is not always an indication of the favorable candidate, of course. People over money is what we like to say. We have lots of people, they have lots of money, which is A-okay. What is important is representation and having your voice heard. So again, we would love to earn your support if you live in Alexandria to come vote on June 8th. If you don't live in Alexandria, please reach out. If you'd like to help support our campaign, go to our website, learn more, and get involved.
Okay. To conclude, I want to ask a couple of questions about Ethiopia. So have you ever visited Ethiopia? And when was the last time you visited?
Yes, last time I visited was the summer of 2017. It was wonderful. I was there for about a month. I was able to travel around between Addis, Bahar Dar, Lalibela, Gondar, and a few other places, but those were my main areas. And I have lots of family, of course. I have lots of family in Addis, and our family runs a nonprofit, Wegene Ethiopian Foundation. We also have a remote office in Addis as well. And so we do a lot of outreach to the community, both here in the DC metro area, but also back in Ethiopia as well. So yes, I do stay up to date. I love listening in also on our new innovations coming out of Ethiopia. We have a growing economy, and I'm excited to see what we can help amplify as part of our efforts here in Alexandria to help bring the vibrancy of our culture here as well.
So, as you know, my last question, as you know, Ethiopia has been going through a transition. I know you run for public office, so the last 3 years has been both joyful and full of sadness. What's your understanding, or what is your feeling of what's going on in Ethiopia?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is limited, right? Being here in the United States, we don't have that firsthand knowledge or experience of what is happening on the ground, of course. Our news is through mass news media. And so when I think of our country right now, we are at a time of crisis. We have much going on, and it's important to recognize that folks who think about Ethiopia right now need to understand that this has been a hard time for many of our community members. We need to ensure that as we think about Ethiopia in the future and in advocating for democracy in Ethiopia as well, that we help bring the values and ideals that have worked well for us here in the United States. I also am skeptical, though, of Western intervention in what I would say is a in-country issue. Throughout history, we have seen that the United States is not always what I would say in the right fight all the time. And so making sure that we as members of our diaspora have our perspectives aligned with what we can do here on a local level. And so in this race for Alexandria City Council, of course, my main priority has been the residents of Alexandria. But it's hard to help our community help move through what is going on right now in Ethiopia. Of course, it's top of mind for many of us. It's top of mind for our families and for the international community. But we have to make sure that when we discuss things without having a full picture of what's going on and firsthand information, that we help put things in perspective. And the perspective that I have is that we are at a time of crisis, that we need leaders who can help ensure that the values and the vibrancy of our culture and our history is still amplified in a way that is positive, while addressing and acknowledging the gaps that we have in ensuring that this time of crisis is one that is addressed in an equitable and just way. And so for me in Alexandria, of course, it's hard to travel around running for office. Our issues are more local issues related to, again, affordable housing, around economic support post this pandemic and during this pandemic, around ensuring that we meet our goals related to environmental sustainability, and that we continue to prioritize and amplify those that have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. That has been our key focus in this campaign. And we would certainly love to help ensure that those that are members of the African diaspora, and more specifically our Ethiopian and Eritrean community, are supported here in Alexandria, that we have a voice, that we have a seat at the table, and that we can help start a conversation around how we can bridge the gap and provide opportunities to connect Alexandria with that of our larger international community as well.
Well, I guess I said last, but I want to add one more question. You are one of the first generation Ethiopian Americans. Numerically, probably you are in the group of first generation Ethiopian Americans, because the vast majority of Ethiopians migrated 30, 40 years ago. So you, by running for this office, you will be representing a large segment of the first generation Ethiopian Americans. And as you know, a number of Ethiopian Americans of your age group are lawyers, engineers, computer scientists, all over, very successful. And what is your message for them? What message does your candidacy send to them? And I also want to invite you to make concluding remarks.
Yes. I think it highlights that this is a time of change, and that we as a diaspora community, have an opportunity to help shape not just the workforce, but also how we conduct politics here in the United States. You know, many of us who come from immigrant families understand many of these issues, have a different perspective and lived experience than those who traditionally have been in power. And so utilizing this moment as one that can help drive change forward, not just for our communities, but for all marginalized communities here is important. And I hope that my campaign and this new platform that we've created to help build connections, not just in Alexandria, but also throughout our Ethiopian diaspora community, is leveraged in a way that can help ensure that more of us run for public office. I think this is a great time to help ensure that we sponsor and support candidates who come from our shared heritage and our shared experiences that can help also champion our causes. And I believe now is the most optimal time for us to step up and serve our community.
Meron Taklu, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. This has been Insight for today. Until our next program, bye-bye.